So I'd like to introduce you to John Idowu and Rajan Gamide. Please give them a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm going to time myself because I tend to speak for too long. So thank you very much to everyone for coming here. And what we want to do with the first set of talk, Rajan and I want to lay the background and so that we all be on the same page. So like I tell people that if the purpose for coming here is you want to use your soil for engineering purposes, you are in the wrong place. So you're not going to hear any engineering talks today. So we want to use soil for agricultural production. That's why we're here. So we all want to be on the same page. So what is soil health? I've put a very simple definition there, which is kind of similar to how we look at human health. The state of soil being in sound physical, chemical, and biological condition, and having the capability to sustain the growth and development of land plants. So that's a definition of soil health in relation to an agricultural producer. So we're looking at the growth and development of land plants, but it goes further than that. So we're placing emphasis, when we talk of soil, the emphasis is on sustainability. And I've listed a few things there. We're looking at production of crops, among other things, and agricultural products, not only just crops. We raise animal on land too. So production of agricultural commodities. And then we're also thinking of retention and filtration of water. That's part of the whole system that is linked to agriculture. We're also thinking of habitat for diverse organisms. We're thinking, so we want to think in a broad way when we're thinking about soil health. And then we're talking about recycling of nutrients. All those things, they are embedded in the definition of the soil health. So when we start thinking of soil health, it's like the secretary was saying, it's a change in the way of thinking. It's a paradigm shift in our way of thinking, the way we relate to the land. So, why are we talking about soil health? Because we are facing a global soil health crisis. Like I put over there, over the past 40 years, 30% of the world's arable land has become unproductive. And a conservative estimate shows that we're losing about over $400 billion, worldwide because of those unproductive lands. And one of the major factor of soil degradation is erosion. And in many places it's happening 10 to 40 times more than the rate of soil formation. If something is going, something has to replace it. So the soil formation rate cannot cope with the rate of soil erosion that we are experiencing in many parts of the world. And then the interesting thing is that while agriculture is a contributor to the problem, it's also at the same time being threatened. It's like a feedback loop. The agriculture is there because of wrong agriculture, wrong way of managing the soil. We are losing a lot of soil. We are losing a lot of soil layers. And then at the same time, the same soil is what we want to use to produce, so it's affecting the productivity. So our solution is to think about how to do things better. And in some places, they said we may only have 60 years of harvest left if you continue business as usual. That is not a good thing. We want to manage the soil so that generations to come will still have access to the soil, when we are long gone, so. And then the good news, I gave the bad news first, but the good news is that the trend can be reversed, So about 50% of the world's habitable land is used for agriculture, and it's possible through good management practices. If we do the right thing, if we practice agriculture right, we can restore degraded soil, and we can prevent future degradation and conserve our resources and make the soil healthy and begin to produce crops sustainably. And when we talk about soil health, you know, when the soil is healthy, we are unlocking critical soil functions. And here is another classical definition of soil health among scientists: is continued capacity of the soil to function as a vital living ecosystem that sustains plants, animals, and humans. So now, it's far now a broader net. We're thinking of a broad understanding of soil health. It's wide now. And when the soil is healthy, it performs so many ecosystem services and so many functions. It regulates water, sustains plants and animal life. It provides physical stability and support for plants, filtering waters and pollutants. So we want all those things to be happening within the system. And we want to be able to use the soil sustainably so that it will produce for future generations. And then what is our approach to soil health? I love bringing in these three circles. You know, over time we've been used to chemical aspect of the soil, you know, for almost 200 years. We've figured out that if we want to grow crops, just throw in some fertilizers into the soil and then the crops will grow. And what happened? We forgot about the physical and biological aspect of the soil. So what we have been doing is to feed the plant directly. Whereas the best way to manage the soil is to feed the soil so that the soil can feed the plants. But we bypass that process. We are feeding the soil directly and other aspects of the soils were getting damaged. And over time we have degradation. Associate Dean Dr. Lee White was talking about the dust bowl and all those things happening, you know. So the chemical aspect is still important. We are not saying that discard the chemical aspect, but now we are thinking in terms of bringing everything together, biological and the physical, everything integrated. That is what soil health is about. All soil components are equally important. Some people used to ask me that, okay, we want to go into soil, so let's forget about nutrient management. No, nutrient management is still in there. But we're looking at the biological and the physical component. And when we want to talk about soil health, we talk in terms of indicators. We talk in terms of measurements that we can measure along the different attributes of the soil, the physical, chemical, and biological. I won't mention all of them, but you can see them on the screen there. And all these presentations will be available online. And then I want to quickly share, because my time is running fast, an assessment that we did in New Mexico just a couple of years back. We looked at soil indicators across fields, crop fields, in major land resources areas, and major land resources areas, they are geographic areas that are characterized by a particular pattern of soil, climate, water resources, and land use. So we did that, and we sampled field crops, tree crops, and vegetable crops in a total of 72 fields, at 2 depths. And we analyzed for soil physical, chemical, and biological. Actually, when I say we, it means my graduate students. Dr. Mohamed Omar is the RS. Stand up, let everybody acknowledge him. He did a great job. That was part of his PhD. I mean, the guy ran around the state. So, good work, good job. And just to show you the different land resources areas where we went to, you can see 35, 70C, and all across the state, we took samples from field crops, tree crops, and vegetable crops. And some of the crops that we encountered in those fields, I've listed them here. I'm going a little fast so that I'll be able to share the results and you can see the results. So you see field crops, alfalfa, winter wheat, oats, corn grain, corn silage, and under tree crops and orchard, we have apple, poplar tree, peach, pecan, grapes. Then under vegetables, we have chili, onion, watermelon, pumpkins, carrots. So what we did was to go into those fields and we took samples. And those were the kind of crops we found, occurring in those fields when we took the samples. And then we did a lot of analysis. We did physical, chemical, biological. Remember, when it comes to soil health, we have to think in terms of all the three together. We're not just thinking in terms of, we're not one-dimensional, we are multi-dimensional. when it comes to soil health. So we had all those measurements. And then let's look at how different land resources areas performed. So what I've done here is to show you the areas where those major cities where those land resources areas are located. If you look at, first of all, the soil structure, we looked at two indicators here. I've just brought up two results. Resistance to wind erosion and resistance to water erosion. So we use different measurements to characterize resistance to wind, resistance to water erosion. So you can see there that different land resources area perform differently. Look at Las Cruces area. We tend to have, in the farms we sampled, we tend to have better resistance to aggregation compared to Portales area. So you can see very different. And then you can see different land resources area around Farmington, Española, Roswell. So you can see that we have different issues across the state. And then look at wet aggregate stability. Farmington tend to perform better than the rest. And we still see Portales area performing the lowest in this resistance to water erosion. When we look at the compaction, there are two levels of compaction we looked at. The compaction at the surface level and the compaction way inside the soil. So at the surface level, you can see that Portales area tend to have more compacted soil because for compaction, the higher the value, the worse it is. Not the higher the better. There are some indicators, the higher the better, some the higher the worse. So 1.5, that's quite compacted, those soils there. And then when we look at penetration resistance, incidentally in Farmington area, we tend to have very higher subsoil compaction there, very high. So it goes on like that. So this kind of study gave us an understanding of what problems we have in different parts of our state. And then when we look at salinity issue, Las Cruces and Roswell, they were saying, yes, and then, the soils are high. This is another indicator where when it's high, it's not good. When it's low, it's good. So you can see both the sodium and electrical conductivity, which is a measure of salinity and measure of sodium problem, we tend to have higher problems in Las Cruces and Roswell area. Then when we look at nutrients in the soil, like available nitrogen, and Roswell area, probably they're dumping a lot of fertilizer in that area, so it's obvious. They have high phosphorus and high nitrate in the soil. Because these samples were taken in the fall, after the growing season. So to have that residual amount of nutrient, that's telling. So you can see the nutrients there, and then in Española area, you can see that the nutrients are very low in that area. Probably they're not using so much fertilizers, I don't know. Then let's look at the organic component. When we look at the soil organic matter, Roswell and Farmington area, they tend to have higher organic matter compared to the rest of the areas we studied. And then the active carbon, which is the labile carbon, the total soil organic matter is an indicator of long-term carbon storage in the soil. And the labile carbon is the soil microbial food indicator. On the right-hand side of the screen, those are the fresh organic carbon in the soil that microbes are going to use. So you can see that Farmington area has more than most of the others. Portales has the least, and also the least organic matter is kind of rhyming, the carbon. Then let's look at soil microbes, which is quite interesting. You can see that Farmington had much higher total microbial biomass in the soil, which is kind of expected. And then when we look at the avoscular mycorrhizal fungi, the mycorrhizal fungi, how many of us are familiar with that? The fungi, yeah, many people are familiar that associate with plant roots to help with nutrient and water absorption. We found Española and Farmington area to have higher levels of those mycorrhizal fungi. Look at Portales, it's just 18. So it's giving us an understanding of what is happening around the state. And then let's look at the cropping system, because my time, I have less than around 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes now. I have my timer here. Let me see, like it. So when we look at the soils indicator in cropping system. What we've done here is not only just giving the value, but we also rated them, whether there is low, medium, or high. So you can see in field crops, when we look at the indicator for wind erosion, indicator for water erosion, we tend to have better values, and also the compaction. Better values in field crop production compared to tree crops and vegetable crops. When we look at those physical indicators. And then when we look at the available water, that is the amount of water the soil can hold, we tend to have better also in tree crops, and tree crops actually had the highest, but it wasn't different from the field crops. But the remarkable thing is in vegetable system, it was very low. And the problem with vegetable system is that it's, the tillage is so much, it's over-tilled. So probably that is affecting the rate of organic matter sequestration there. And then the electrical conductivity with tree crops and field crops tend to have better than the vegetable crops. It has elevated salinity. And then the pH was about the same. And then when we look at the organic matter, the field crops tend to have higher organic matter. 2% is good. We could do better. It's in the medium range. And you can see those red, there are a lot of reds across the different cropping systems, especially tree crops and vegetable crops. And then the labile carbon, the fresh food for microbes. You can see that field crops also have better, labile carbon, and then also when you look at all the microbial indicators, the field crops tend to have better than the tree crops and the vegetable crops. But particularly interesting is that for vegetable crops, you have a lot of reds. So there is need for improvement in our vegetable production system because there is a lot of processing of the soil going on. So they have to stay on top of soil health game in order to make sure that things are going well. So just a brief conclusion based on my few minutes of presentation. We found out that different areas in New Mexico are experiencing different soil health challenges. So this kind of study helps us to know where to target our resources. So, and then different cropping systems also, they have different soil health challenges, and and we need to address those challenges by putting resources, soil health management strategies into those different places where we need to put them, And we also need a more comprehensive assessment of soil health. This is a small sample relative to the large New Mexico, the large farms and different farms we have in New Mexico. And we're talking of 72 fields compared to thousands of fields. So we need a more comprehensive soil health assessment in the state that cuts across different soils and land use types. And then to achieve this, we will need partnership and collaboration between governmental and non-governmental agencies, NMSU, stakeholders, So that's why we have all of us here together. We need to partner so that we can do a comprehensive assessment. And in addition to that, partnership with institutions in Western US region, will also prove beneficial. Like we have Dr. Blankenship here, he's from University of Arizona, and is partnering with us in New Mexico on soil health assessment and management. So we need more of such collaboration. Also, we are partnering with folks from Colorado State University, and that will actually help us in developing a comprehensive soil health assessment and management for the region that will benefit our farmers. And finally, in the final slides, I want to acknowledge all the funding agencies that have been supporting us over the years, several USDA NIFA grants, and then our ART grants, and then cooperative extension service, and then agricultural experiment station, and then NMDA Healthy Soil Program. They supported us very strongly at NMSU to get a lot of things on ground. And also I want to acknowledge my team members, Dr. Mohammed Omar, who stood up the other time, Dr. Abibola Ojekomi, and then Ibukolu Afadeni, who is a current PhD student working on soil health. And then several collaborators, including Dr. Gimire and all the other folks that have been part of our program and projects over the years. So I'm going to stop here because I have 12 seconds left.